We gather this hour as people of faith, with sorrows and joys, needs and gifts. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln on this Sunday morning. Our minister, the Reverend Oscar Sinclair, has taken the day off. My name is Charlie Ahern. I am a member of this congregation and a worship associate. And I just want to, as an aside, say, the first time I attended a UU service, I really liked the minister and the sermon and thought, let's go back. Turned out that was a member of the congregation. Wasn't even the minister, but it was worth coming back. Sunday morning, whether you are here in person, watching the live stream of this service, or watching the recorded service on YouTube, this is a chance to proclaim who we are and what we are about. Throwing open the doors of the congregation and proclaiming the radical love and welcome that is at the heart of our faith. The Unitarian Church of Lincoln aspires to be a loving community, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and the world. That remains true. It will remain true whether in person, online, or in some way of being that we cannot imagine yet. So our opening hymn is one that you should be familiar with. It's 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. I'm always careful to step away from the microphone when it's time for me to sing. And we have a story from Chelsea. Excuse me.
Our story today is called Joy by Corinne, Avarice, and Isabel Folath. Fern loved Nana. She loved her butterfly cakes, her mantelpiece mice, and her cat, Snowball. Most of all, she loved her smile. But recently, Nana had stopped baking cakes. The mice were dusty, and Snowball was more like a ball of fuzz. Worst of all, Nana hardly ever smiled. "What's wrong with Nana?" Fern asked her mother. "I don't know," Mom replied. "It's like the joy has gone out of her life." "What's joy?" asked Fern. "Joy is what makes your heart happy and your eyes twinkle. Like when we dance after dinner, or when I get the giggles with Ernie, or when I go whooshing down a slide?" "Yes, a great big whoosh," said Mom. Nana deserved some whoosh, thought Fern. And if the joy had gone out of Nana's life, then she would bring it back. But where would Fern find it, and how would she carry it to Nana? She searched the house for a catching kit. A can, a paper bag, a saucepan, a box with no lid, a lid with no box, a fishing net and a pointy stick, and into Fern's catching bag it all went. That afternoon, Fern and her mother set off for the park. There would be plenty of joy there. No one would mind if she borrowed some for Nana. A puppy bounded toward Fern, its floppy ears flying up and down. "Bounce, bounce, bounce," Fern giggled. She felt the whoosh of joy. She tried to carry the bounce, but the bounce wouldn't go in the box. On the swing, a baby chuckled each time her daddy tickled her feet. "Tickle, tickle, chuckle, chuckle." Fern chuckled too. She felt the whoosh of joy. She tried to catch the chuckles and she tried to catch the tickles, but neither the chuckles nor the tickles would go in the can. When Fern reached the duck pond, a shimmer of sun's sparkles rippled across the water. Fern smiled. She felt the whoosh of joy. Nana would love this, she thought. She tried to catch the sparkles first with her fishing net and then with her paper bag, finally with a scoop from her saucepan. Finding joy was easy, but catching it was hard. Fern walked home with heavy feet. She loved Nana and wanted to bring joy back into her life, but her catching bag was empty. Nana was snoozing in her chair. Fern laid her head on her arm. "What's the matter?" asked Nana. "I wanted to catch some joy for you, but I couldn't," said Fern sadly. Fern told Nana about all the things she had seen. To her surprise, Nana smiled. It was the biggest, widest whoosh of a smile Fern had ever seen. "You don't need a can or a box or a net to bring me joy," Nana said. "You bring me all the joy in the world just by being you." The next day, Fern took Nana to the park. Whoosh! Together they found joy in the most unusual places. And this time, Fern's catching bag was full to the brim with Nana's delicious butterfly cakes. And that is the end of our story today.
This reading is from Proverbs of Ashes by the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker. This passage is about a time when Parker was in deep despair. In the midst of what she found herself in a situation where she was invited to look through a telescope focused on Jupiter. Reflecting on that moment, she writes, "It would be wrong to think of this moment as one in which joy triumphed over despair. Such a view assumes that bad feelings need to be excised or suppressed by stronger, better feelings. Peace or happiness or even survival are imagined to be accomplished by cutting something out or dominating some aspect of the self. Viewing the soul this way internalizes violence. I do not defeat negative feelings of anguish and despair because I saw something more lovely and good. Rather, I became able to feel more. My feelings broadened. Pain, sadness, and despair were not eliminated and overcome. I embraced them with a greater heart. My consciousness had been broadened to embrace memories of the religious community, immediate experiences of the world's beauty, and the kindness of human beings, and a vivid sense of future possibility. And now we'll do hymn number 231, Angels We Have Heard on High, a little Christmas spirit. We share a time for joys and sorrows as we gather here each week in person or online. We have much to mourn during these times of pandemic, not the least of which is not being able to spend time with each other in person every Sunday. This is a time of sorrow, and yet it can also be a time of joy. May we discover ways to hold on to joy during this next week. As you listen to this next song, please type your name or the name of someone you would like us to hold in joy or in sorrow in the chat box online. And I'm also sad to mention that I was told that Bryce Brazil has passed away. I don't have much information other than that, but I was asked to mention that. Oh, and if anyone here would like to say the name of a person you're holding in joy or sorrow, please do so. Nope. a little out of order here. Good. Each Sunday, we take up a collection to support this congregation and our partners in the wider world. While we're in this time of physical distancing and mostly outside of our building, we give primarily through text on Sunday morning. So if you would like to try to text giving this morning, simply text UC Lincoln and the amount you wish to give to 73256. That's UC Lincoln and the amount you wish to give to 73256. You can also send a physical check to our building at 6300 A Street. Thank you for your generosity. Now, I thought that joy would be easy to talk about, but this has been very difficult for me to work about on this topic. To give you a little background of how worship associates end up doing homilies, we meet once a month and we go over the calendar of services for the next 2 months. And people say, oh, I can make that date or I can make a different date. And initially I thought, oh, holding history, that sounds interesting. I'll do holding history in November. But then someone else took that date, and so I said, okay, well, I'll do this. Yeah, I can fill in early December. And it was opening to joy. And I thought, oh, joy, I could use some joy. That sounds like a good, fun topic. And but it's been hard for me to get started on this one. Joy, first of all, I like to define terms first. Joy is an intense and especially ecstatic and exultant happiness. So ecstatic, very great happiness, extreme delight. Exultant, filled with or expressing great joy. And as I read about people talking about joy, it sounded a lot of people wrote about things like, oh, well, it was a beautiful sunrise this morning. It was a joy. But it didn't seem exultant. I think that's one of the things about joy that we enjoy. It's usually, it's, hey, that's a great sunrise. Look at that. Did you see that? Where you're expressing your joy. You're expressing your happiness to other people. But for me, it was to get started thinking about joy and talking about joy. I was not in a good place a few weeks ago. And as an example, we had our open circle, I think it was this week. And, we check in. We usually check in at the beginning of the open circle. And I just couldn't do it. I had a list of all the things that were not joyous for me. And I thought, well, I should tell people what's going on. And I thought, no, I don't want to burden them. I think the moment I realized I was having a problem was I looked at the books. I always have book stacks around. And I looked at the stack of the books on the coffee table that I was reading. There was one book about the last year of Donald Trump's administration, which was not a happy, happy book. Then the next book on my table was like a 800 or 900 page biography of Adolf Hitler. And for whatever reason, I've been reading way too much about the 1920s and 1930s in Germany and how that happened. And I've also, another book on my table was, I remember the title of this one, How the South Won the Civil War. And it talked about, the history of, I got the impression the core was, she was talking about an oligarchy based on an extractive business model. So basically, whatever you can take out of the ground, and we need the land, that's what helped push settlers to the west, was more land. We need more land. And as the country moved west, slavery moved west. And that's where all the struggles were. I mean, I can't remember if it's the Kansas-Nebraska Act or the other way around. But, and then I remember reading about how Lincoln got its name. Does everybody know how Lincoln got its name? So originally, the city of Lancaster was in Lancaster County, and it was competing with Omaha to see which city would be named capital of the new territory of Nebraska. And there was a big struggle on because the folks south of the Platte River tended to belong to the South faction. North of the river, it was the North faction, which was Omaha. And the South faction supported the Confederacy. So Lancaster was part of the territory that supported the Confederacy during the Civil War. And after the Civil War, they were debating about where the capital of the new territory should be. And there was a legislator from Omaha who kind of said, the only way I'm going to allow Lancaster to become capital of the Nebraska is if it changes its name to Lincoln, because I know how much the people of Lancaster hate Abraham Lincoln. And the leader of the Southern faction, who I think was from Nebraska City, said, okay, we want to be the state capital? Sure, we'll call it Lincoln, and we still hate him. Actually, I think this particular legislator said, I hate Lincoln more than I hate Satan. So I'm reading all this really terrible history. It was not good. It was not good. So I was putting myself into this really bad place. And then along about this week or two before Thanksgiving, one of our 6 cats was diagnosed with diabetes. So it just so happened that at about the same time, my wife said, I have these tremors in my hands. I don't know what it is. And I said, well, go to the doctor. And she said, well, no, I'm afraid that the doctor might tell me that it's either MS or Parkinson's. Fortunately, she's gone to the doctor and she's working through that process. But so she said, I can't give the cat insulin injections. You're going to have to do all of it. And so I'm giving our cat insulin injections twice a day. And I think it hurts me more than it hurts the cat. And then, so how did I spend my Thanksgiving day? I had to do I think they call it an insulin curve test. So every 2 hours, I had to take a little lancet and take blood from the cat's ear so that we could get the insulin measurements. And I'll tell you that bothered me much more than the cat. And I kind of felt bad about that, and I don't know, it probably shouldn't have, but it really upset me. So I'm in this kind of, and then I put up the Christmas tree. And that's a family tradition. I get to put up the tree and the Christmas tree. Well, we have 2 trees. One's like 9 feet and the other's 7 feet, and I have to put all the Christmas lights on the tree, and usually it's accompanied by some obscenities. It's not, I always dread that one day. It's sort of like my entrance into the Christmas season is wrestling with strings of lights that as soon as you put them on the tree, they seem to go dark. And at this point, I was thinking about this and writing some of these things down, and then I thought, oh, that's interesting. I went through these lists of what I thought were bad things that were happening in my life, and I didn't even mention the pandemic. I don't know if I've become so used to it that, I guess I don't know if I've accepted it as a regular part of our lives. I hope not. But who knows? I don't know. So this trying to figure out joy, trying to address joy, I was coming from a bad, not a joyous place. I was not joyous at the time. And so I was trying to figure out, how do I talk to people about joy when my own personal mood or emotional state is not good, not in joy. I'm not joyous. But then I remembered that, and I think I've said this before on a Sunday, is that I don't believe heaven exists. I don't believe heaven exists. I believe that this may be as close as we get. So think about that. This may be heaven. And the way I think we should live in that, if that's real, is to make this as close to heaven as possible for each other. And so that's what I started thinking about joy, was that I want to make this as close to heaven as possible. So I can't leave you all with despair, and I looked up depression. I had to read up a little on depression and say, am I depressed? Is that what this is? I'm not sure yet. I may need to talk to someone about that, but So what I want to do is to share with you, and I don't know if they put up a title or not, but I'm thinking about, my working title was Needing and Sharing Joy. So I need joy because I was not feeling well, and I hopefully can help you think about how you can bring more joy into your own lives. That helped me. That helped me as I thought about things that I do or could do that would bring more joy into my own life. And the first one I'm thinking of is I would like to suggest that you call an old friend, perhaps someone you haven't spoken to in years. One day I got a message on my phone. I usually don't pick up my phone if I don't recognize the phone number. So I got a message on my phone, and it was, "Hi, Charlie, this is Charlie." This was someone I had probably not spoken to in close to 50 years. When we were in college together, he was the biggest pothead I knew. So we kind of traded, how are you? What are you? I called him back. He left his number. I called him back, and we traded information. And how are you doing? What are you doing? And the next thing I know, he's on a long discourse about medical cannabis and talking about his, illness that he was trying to, he had diagnosed, and he was trying to look for treatments other than, pharmaceuticals. And so he was working with different doses and different types, I guess, smoke it, eat it, whatever. And, and so he was apparently making progress and had found his, right levels or whatever. So he was doing pretty well, I guess. And then I thought, that's interesting. Here's a guy, he had recently retired as a professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. And he was talking about how good, how he had figured out medical cannabis for himself. So call an old friend. You may be surprised. Next, if possible, do something physically challenging. So I remember last winter, we had some days when it was 20 below zero and it snowed a foot of snow and all that sort of thing. I had been going for walks pretty regularly during the winter, and I thought, well, it's just snow. What the heck? And so I went for a walk. It's 20 below, there's a foot of snow on the ground, the streets aren't plowed, and it was great. There were cars scattered all over the streets. People had just abandoned their cars and said, "That's not going anywhere." And actually, I was walking down one of the side streets out here, and there was a woman who had gotten her car stuck. And so this other guy and I are out there, pushing, and we didn't have shovels, we didn't have anything, and we just could not get her moving. And so, but it was to me, that was fun. I got home and my wife was like, "You're nuts. What are you doing?" And I was like exultant. It's great out there. I wore all my clothes. I was well dressed. I didn't get cold. I tried to help someone, and it was a beautiful day. There was not much traffic. So if you can, and for everybody it's different, try do something physical that you normally wouldn't try doing. You may be able to exult over your success. Cook a treat for someone. So my wife had her birthday in September, and I remember we went to one of her niece's house for a birthday dinner, and they brought out one chocolate cupcake with one candle in it. And I thought, that's not cool. So I said, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll cook my wife. I'll bake a cake for my wife. And she likes German chocolate cake. Oh my. Yeah. And so I looked at the recipe and I thought, oh my, that's not. So I went down to the store and I bought a box of Pillsbury, German chocolate cake mix. And then they said, and you need 2 of those canisters of the frosting. And I thought, 2 canisters of frosting. So anyway, I got home and I'm baking. Oh, by the way, it was a 3-layer cake. So, and it's like, I had not baked or attempted to bake a cake in a long time. So I've got this cake that I'm building, and I discovered that when you put the first layer down and you cover it with the frosting, and then you put the second layer down and you cover it with frosting. Well, I put the second layer down and it immediately broke apart and it started migrating across the frosting. But my wife, the other day, my wife said to me, when are you going to make another cake? So she enjoyed it. I made an attempt. It was edible. It may not have looked like something you'd buy in a store, but it was okay. And she said, when are you going to make another one? So I will. I'll make her another German chocolate cake. I'm not sure how that can keep that middle layer from not disintegrating, but okay. You can talk to me after the service. No. I got to go for the multi-layers. Another idea, play with kids. Yes. So we went over to the same niece's house on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and the niece has a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old boy. And the 6-year-old boy was talking about how great he was doing at hockey. And I said, oh, well, I played hockey when I was in high school. And the next thing I know, we are in the living room in front of the big screen TV next to the glass-fronted fireplace with some kind of like a ball that was like a ball and a beanbag or something. And he found a little plastic hockey stick for me. And so we're playing hockey in the living room. And a 6-year-old has fun. It was just, you can't resist when you're playing hockey in the living room with a 6-year-old. And then Dad comes in, hey, you guys, you got to be careful now. The TV is back there and the fireplace is there. And so we went down and got his 4-year-old brother involved. So the 3 of us played hockey in the basement. So I encourage you, if you have a chance, play with kids. I'm a reader, so I like to read books, and I thought it would be good to read an uplifting book. And I'm not certain why, but every couple of years, I read a book called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. So if you haven't had a chance, it's a book about it's fiction. It's a book about a contemporary of Buddha, and who kind of didn't follow Buddha, but was aware of, and he had a friend, Siddhartha had a friend who became a follower of Buddha, and so it was a lot about Buddhism and that background. And I just thought that's one of my favorite books. So if you haven't read Siddhartha, I'm recommending it. or any other uplifting book. So after the service, maybe you could give me some hints. I was going to say, I reread Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, but I'm not sure that's an uplifting, happy book. And so it goes. And then, okay, here's one that might sound a little manipulative, I think. Practice optimism. So I've read, I can't remember who wrote this, but he wrote about the difference between optimists and pessimists. And he described how they respond to misfortune, where a pessimist tends to say, my life is a disaster, I will never fix this, it's all hopeless. Whereas the optimist says, this part of my life is messed up, but all this is pretty good. This is going okay. And this thing that's not going well in my life, probably temporary, so if I can get through this sermon, things will be fine. But that's when I started again thinking about depression, and I read a little. Some of you, I'm ignorant, I'll admit that, but I did a little bit of reading on it because my mother was mildly depressed, I think, and she was, taking medication for many years. So I don't know if that's something that I might be susceptible to. So that's why I was reading up on that and thinking about, do I need to talk to someone about that? So we'll see. If my wife will go to find out if she's got Parkinson's or MS, I could talk to someone about whether I have depression or not. And then the other thing is take care of your body and soul. And the idea behind this is that you need to do physical activity. I've been doing a lot of, so in the past year, I think I've lost 35 pounds. So, but I've been stuck for the last 2 months, so. But I think, 35 pounds is pretty good. Oh, my screen just went, password, yes, password. A lot of people recommend meditation, and I do that. I go in spurts with meditation. There's a woman, her name is Tara Brach, Tarabrach, and she does guided meditations. She does longer talks that run maybe an hour. It seems a little bit like a religious service, but then she does little 20-minute guided meditations that I really enjoy. So that's another thing to think about. So those are my, hopefully, after sharing my difficulties in the last month or so, I wanted to share some ideas with you about how you might bring some joy into your own lives. And I think you need to try that. This is the season, right? We're singing about rejoice and joyous and joy. So I hope that you'll all take some time to bring some joy into your own lives. Well, so may it be. Thank you. Now, speaking of joy, hymn 245, Joy to the World. I'm standing here singing and thinking, what am I singing? Is anybody else on the same same song? All right, closing words, and then I think we have one more piece of music. So this is my go-to closing. I always read this. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace. Thank you.